2. Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. We are here once again with legendary strength coach, according to Men's Health Magazine and soon to be Washington Post, Dan John. Dan, first there were 2 exercise programs, then there were 3 exercise programs. I was going through some of your old content, which is always good to do, and you had an old video, Dan, probably about from 2 years ago, and I wanted to get your updated thoughts on it. We don't have to hop into it just yet, but I want to put it out there on the table for discussion today of programming the following 3 exercises, because I personally love these 3 exercises. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on this: swings, dips, and pull-ups. Swings, dips, and pull-ups.
Yeah.
You remember, ringing some bells. You remember what I'm talking about now? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Every so often, people ask me for these minimalist programs. Of course, you got to understand, I'm a fan of minimalist programs, but the mistake is this: you don't start with minimalist programs. So generally, they work well. You have to have a lot of training time under your belt, and then generally, you almost have to be in a place where this is actually, if you don't mind, this is actually this is a lecture, but
this is a good point. The truth about minimalist programs. Let's hear it. Mm-hmm.
So if you come to me and you've been lifting for 8 years, the Olympic lifts, the whole kettlebell world, power lifts, maybe even we're a high end, still are a high end athlete, early 20s, mid 20s, something like that, and what happens in a training program is it starts here and then it just expands. Somebody goes to a mobility, and I'm not ripping on it, but so we were doing original strength with Tim Anderson, but now we've added these other ones. And then we were doing the Olympic lift, snatch and clean and jerk from the floor, but now we have the muscle snatch, the hang muscle snatch, the power hang muscle snatch, the snatch grip clean, the clean grip snatch,
Yep.
Everything just keeps, getting bigger, longer, more nuanced, more ideas, things, you're doing 300 prehab exercises for a shoulder that hurts because you hurt it playing the sport, and then you bench press the day after a shoulder separation. You come to me and you go, I just read this thing online that Pat Flynn has, and he's got these kettlebell complexes. Should I add them? And we both go, can you really handle more? No, when's the last time you made any progress? Well, it's been 3 years, but I know that I'm going to, and that's when you do a minimalist program. A minimalist program is when you've taxed the word more out.
Mm-hmm.
You've moored yourself, and good for you. And now I walk in with the magic glove of might, and yes. So now what you're going to do is, I had success with one athlete: incline bench press and front squat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is the time for those minimalist two lift programs.
Yes.
The downside of 2 lift programs, I think, like with the kettlebell swing, the upside, you would notice, if even if you just ran some hills, you'd be okay. But you'll probably notice that if your sport has a quaddy movement, a squatty quaddy movement, you'll probably notice that you probably need to do some kind of front squat sprinkle it in. But really, the swing, the deadlift, certain deadlift variations, I would include the snatch grip, in my case, the thick bar, but that was a specific. So if you did a deadlift or a swing, and then you did an upper body movement, but here's the problem with the upper body, and that's why you'll see that in that program was called the dip and the chin.
Mm-hmm.
The dip and the chin basically work everything in your upper body. And here's the thing for most of the athletes I deal with: they still want to look good, So doing that dip and chin will make you feel, it'll make you feel like you're getting some of those bodybuilding hypertrophy movements in it. That's why, if you ask me for a perfect program, I'd say get a barbell, put it on the ground, clean it, press it, and then take the same barbell and then squat snatch it and do that until you do. So you bought that 310 pound Olympic barbell set, 140 kilos. You keep on that until you clean and press the 140 kilos, the 310, and you snatch the 310. And then we'll talk about the next program. So there's your minimalist program. Well, clearly that's a no. There are not a lot of people in the world who can do that. So you have to. You have to have a little bit of you've got to have some breadth and foundation.
Yes.
And you keep building it, and you keep broadening, and then one day you just say, and now we're going to move on. The best minimalist program I ever did was 2 days a week. The last variation I did on this program was the early aughts, where I did a press twice a week, and then 1 day a week I snatched, and the other day of the week I front. So bench, front squat, bench, snatch.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah.
No, I was going to say there's a lot of wisdom there, and I just want to unpack some of it. So, I'm a big fan of taking a generalist approach. I think humans are sort of meant to be generalists. I mean, we don't smell as good as the horse. We're not as strong as the ostrich, but we can do like more things than those beasts can, right? Exactly. Not as handsome as the gorilla, but you know what I'm getting at, Dan. But we can do a little bit of math, right? So, but at the same time, I often say, hey, if you want to be like a really good generalist and very robust, then you should maybe consider being a short-term specialist. If you try to do everything at once, it's going to get so diluted. Yeah. Your efforts are not going to be that effective. So minimalist programming to me it's always made sense in the way that you've just described it, right? Two places. One is either a back off once you've just maxed out doing more, or just, hey, I just want to focus on a few things for a relatively short amount of time to kind of surge and run in one direction, and maybe I'll just sort of maintain everything else. And then once I'm sort of satisfied with bringing with that strength up or those skill sets up, then I will shift direction and focus on something else, 2 to 3 other exercises or what have you. It has made very little sense to me, however, when people want to do like a 2 exercise program for their entire life. That to me just seems almost preposterous. I don't care what 2 exercises you pick, the best 2 exercises in the world. I just don't see how that would be ideal, right? Just 2 exercises, that's it for the rest of your life. I'm fine with 2 or 3 exercise programs, but to me, it's something that just should be strategically placed. There's limits on how far you probably should go with that, and it needs to fit into, I think, a wider scheme for the generalist. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
You're exactly right. I have some programs that I respect a lot. Bill Toomey, the 72 Olympic decathlon champion, put together this training program for high school kids. And there were 20 lifts in it, but they were all basically 1 and an occasional 2 sets of everything. So, you would do all these exercises, and it was very common back in the late 60s, early 70s to do 1 or 2 sets of 15 to 20 different exercises. Now, are you going to be great at all 20 of those? Well, no. But if we had you on a program of 20 different exercises, and just run with your imagination. So there's going to be curl, there's going to be a curl, a tricep extension, 2 or 3 deadlift variations, clean and press, snatch. I mean, just keep going. It's going to be in there. Okay. If we had you do that for 6 weeks, and there's just so much variation, and then we sit down and go, well, now that you're getting ready for X sport, whatever, I shouldn't even say it because now there are X sports, but you're getting ready for Y sport, okay, whatever Y is, okay? So for Y, you need more of these 5 strengths. And then we slide down to more of a traditional, more like easy strength program or something like that. So, and because there's only 5 exercises or 4 or 3, it doesn't matter. Now we up the number of sets that we do to get you better. And at the end of those 6 to 8 weeks of doing those 5 exercises, we come to another crossroad. And now, of course, maybe it's mid-season and now it's time. Listen, you're strong enough on paper. You're strong enough. Now we need to show that strength out there in the field of play. Here are the 3 exercises you should do in your late off season. To me, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So it's just like how we do everything. You'll notice there was a bit of a pyramid there. We start off with lots of exercises that had trained lots of qualities. We cut it back, and then we cut it back. And then we said, okay, season's over. See you in 6 weeks. Go to the beach, go kayaking, go swimming in an island pond, and we'll see you in 6 weeks. And then do that kind of again. The mistake I think everybody makes is that some people slide over into the bodybuilding idea and they'll have 6 different exercises for the bicep. There's going to be curl, there's going to be, alternating curl, Zottman curl, concentration curl, and cable curl. And that's great, except, unless you're on some performance enhancing drugs, a lot of protein and
little vitamin S.
Someone's picking up the tab for all this. There's no way you're going to be able to get all that stuff done. So that would be, so to me, that's the key to these minimalist training programs. It's when you decide to go minimal is the important thing. And generally go training, you've played around with some of these ideas, and now it's time to pick and choose. Like, for example, the 10,000 swing challenge is idiotic. Having said that, at the end of those 20 workouts, you're pretty good at kettlebell swings, and that good enough that you don't have to do them really that much, and you can move into the cleans or other exercises or snatches or whatever, because you've kind of taken care of your swing technique, your swing local endurance, your grip strength issues. Okay, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, as always, we like to have the sort of theory in the background, give you guys some concepts, and now let's talk about specifics and application. Check it out, the new background, Dan. We're in Tron. So thinking about pull-ups, dips, and swings. If we are going to have just these 3 exercises for however long, what would you recommend? How would you recommend people approach those? Is it 3 days a week? Is that sufficient? What are we looking like in terms of practice and sets and reps and that?
When I look at something minimal like this swing, my brain slides over an easy strength kind of idea. So let's go through the 2 basic options. Okay. I like the idea of doing this 5 days a week. Okay. So and I would say somewhere between 150 and 250 swings, probably at the very, very top. Let's say so. And then I've discovered, I keep saying 250, but 75 to 250 would be your range every day. If on the dips, like in my case, I can do far more dips than I can chins. So I should probably practice the chin daily, and I could probably sprinkle the dips in just 2 or 3 days a week. Okay. Swing daily, chin daily for me. And because we're doing those, and the idea behind that program was those I felt were the 3 also most, now they got to be careful. For most people I work with, chin-ups, that's with the hands facing the face. For most of the people I work up, dips are very shoulder, elbow happy. Now, the second I say that, my teenage athletes always complain about their sternums on dips. And there are listeners who are going to say, I hate the dip for my shoulders. But for a lot of people, it's actually restorative. So it's one of those, your mileage may vary. 3 days a week, I would say that for sure I'd like you in that 200, 250 swings. What I'd like to see is a serious set of swings followed by chins, a serious set of swings followed by dips until you accumulate up to that number. And I would be careful.
I like that.
I'd be careful about recommending exactly how many chins and dips, because in my case, 25 total chins in a workout is hard, but I might be able to do 25 dips in a row. So I don't want to prescribe numbers too closely, because a lot of it depends on how you look. I don't want to brag, but it's weird. It's a lot of dip places don't work for me because I'm a little bit too wide. it always feels like everything's inside of me too much. There was that one Vince Garanda had, and I've been at a couple gyms. He had a V-shaped
Yep.
dip machine where you could slide out and slide in. Now the only problem is your hands were this way, more sliding over more into a push-up position for the hands. But I really liked that because it really did accommodate a lot of different people. And when I bring up something like that, it's not to be like, oh, look at me, I'm so wonderful. It's just to let you know that anytime you have a piece of equipment, it's not going to fit the whole population. You know,
of course.
When I talk about training women weightlifters, most benches are too high for females. They're the shank, the leg, the lower leg, whatever we call that now. When I was young, we called it a shank. I don't know what we call it anymore. I really don't. From your heel to your knee, whatever that. I don't know. Well, this is your forearm, your foreleg, I guess. Very often, women's forelegs are a little bit less, and the problem is, so you have to put boxes or plates here. So and it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal because it doesn't fit. And we've made this adjustment to make it fit. So for many people, if you have a straight bar hanging that's wide, you probably do chins and pull-ups. But many of us, like myself, it's the system is held by bars, which are a perfect place for me to put my hands. The place where my supports are is where my hands should go. And actually that worked out well because that's when I realized that parallel chin-ups are far better for me than either one of those options.
Yeah. So part of the reason I wanted to focus on these 3 exercises because I love them, and they are exercises that feel really good for me. Not, and I think I've got pretty good shoulders. I mean, look at this, Dan. Look, I can do this trick, right? So it's rare that I find an exercise that doesn't work for my shoulders. In fact, the worst feeling exercise for my shoulders just is standard flat bench press. But dips feel awesome. They've always felt awesome. I'm sort of naturally strong at them, and I feel they're just a very nice complement to sort of all the overhead pressing. So one of my a routine that I love is just sort of exactly what you described. Hit a set of swings, hit a set of pull-ups or chin-ups. And I like sort of laddering them too. So a lot of times I'll keep swings constant, maybe 15 reps, and then, 2 chins, 15 reps, 2 dips, 15 reps, 4 chins, 15 reps. And then, just kind of go until you feel like, not an absolute failure, but, kind of hit the ceiling for today, maybe work back down, maybe not. That tends to do a lot for me. And then, if I'm doing that multiple times a week, then maybe one day a week, I'll sort of weight it, kind of push the intensity up a little bit more. Otherwise, just you can get a lot of mileage, I think, even not just with body weight on that stuff, but you mentioned different equipment. I also like to alternate between the sort of fixed bar stuff and the rings if you have them available.
And the rings are probably, it's weird because they're probably I hate to say best, but rings are probably the best for making sure you dip correctly. Having said that, because they move and they twist and they turn and they shake, it also ups the intensity of it. So you're exactly right. If you have there's those little hand push-up things. Those little, you put them on the floor and do push-ups.
Is it the ones that twist and rotate? What do they call it? The perfect.
The little,
just the bars. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do dips inside of parallettes bars, okay, so you got the push-up bar, which, you're 1 inch off the ground. Parallettes, you're probably a foot off the ground. Dip racks, you're probably 4 feet off the ground. Rings, comes this way. I think you'll find that each one of those options, the more grounded, the more cemented into onto the planet Earth your dip machine is, the easier it is.
Yes.
And then the second you get those, those ring things,
Yeah. No, it's a shame you have to explain these types of things, but it seems to be necessary. Gentle listeners, if you've never been on rings before, don't start with dips 40 stories in the air. All right, just don't do that. Keep the rings low. Maybe start with just some push-ups or planks and start to build that stability up, and then eventually you can work just to holding the top position. Be smart, be prudent. Things can get pretty wild on the rings if you've never done them before. But once you do have the command and control there, boy, do they feel good, I think.
Yeah.
By the way, so we'll do questions. I see lots of good stuff in the comments already. We'll do our Q&A here in just a minute. But sorry, Dan, you had another thought you wanted to get in there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of these minimalist programs, and I think there's great value, but always with the asterisks, folks, this isn't for the rest of your life. This isn't, as I tried to do, I tried to do this several times in my life. I'm going to just do these 3 exercises. And the problem is your body might not crave variation, but your brain will quickly. So if you're going to do something like this, give yourself a load limit of about 3 to 6 weeks of the experiment, and hold yourself to that last week.
That's good advice.
If all you're going to do is double kettlebell cleans and I don't know,
push-ups
and push-ups. If you say you can do it for 3 weeks, do try to get all the way, because there's going to be something wonderful you get out of it. And the thing you might get out of it is realizing what gap you have. Well, I've discovered that myself, is when I focus on just 2 or 3 things, then I sit back and go, oh, this is why you need to do, and it could be something as simple as a back squat. It could be something as simple as, I got to tell you, Pat, in my life, there's been a few times I've added curls, the standard barbell curl back in, and after the very first set go, oh, that's okay, that's right. That's why you do it.
I kind of like that. I kind of like that pairing, like back squat and curls, or double clean and push up. You take something that's sort of more intense, more technical demanding, into kind of something that's sort of just simpler. I like that. There's something to that. That's a concept.
Well, I mean, if we talked about this a lot, little boy, back in the day.
Time to take out the Werther's originals to explain this one.
People talk about like just doing the kettlebell snatch with a pressing exercise, because it was that attempt to try to find if you could only do 2 things. If I can only do 2 things, what would you do? Which I always hate, but it'd be an interesting experiment if you kettlebell snatch 3 days a week and did barbell bench press. After about a month, you would lean into me and say, "Oh God, do I miss?" And what you do that for? That's what you want. You want that. Oh, like for example, the middle track season. I can remember, I'd be out throwing the discus, and Coach DeYoung would say, "Danny, you'll be able to go to spring training in 3 weeks." It'd be on a track season, conference, or the league and the regional, sectional, state would all be coming up, and it'd be like, but my brain would go, "Oh yeah, football." And in the middle of football, my friend Steve McCarthy would be over there throwing the discus, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, throwing the discus." And I think there's value to that. Think about how much you miss, in the middle of July when they have that Christmas and July sale. You might be like, "Oh, yay!" And then when Christmas comes around, a couple days after Christmas, you're like, "Oh, I'm so tired of snow," or "I'm so tired of the cold," and you look forward to. I think that's a general part of human nature. Sorry for rambling, but
always good. Always good.
To me, that's the gift of minimal programs, is that they remind you of the other things you need to do.
Right. Perfect. Well, there you go, gentle listeners. Pull-ups, dips, and swings. Take it, use it, get awesome results. Shall we take to some questions now from the gentle listeners?
I think we should take to some questions now.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Drop it now, and we'll get through as many questions as we can. George, gentle listener George, says, Dan has talked about hanging from the bar as a first step to getting your pull-up. Indeed, Dan has. Is there an equivalent of this for dip progressions, Dan? How does somebody work up to getting that good full dip?
Well, I would say, we already kind of hinted towards it. If you get those either parallettes, or you don't even need parallettes, if you got 2 chairs, and just do push-ups between chairs, or, just find yourself in a superior position strength-wise. So feet on the ground, hands up on the chairs, and do some push-ups between chairs. Now, when I was in high school, they started making us do them because we started doing so many push-ups. And I'll tell you one thing you'll find out, push-ups between chairs will have a DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, that is far worse than you could imagine. So prepare yourself for that. But I would just practice 2 chairs, 2 benches, whatever, so that I can do push-ups and drop my body into the middle of it, and then turn around with my feet on the ground and do those chair dips.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where I would start. If you have wrist injuries, the chair dip will be difficult. And that's why you probably want to invest yourself into some kind of parallel. I think they're called parallel, those, sticks that you do the parallel stuff. Yeah.
And I'll just add that, similar progressions for the pull-up, I think, can be pretty easily translated to the dip. Things that people sometimes forget that are useful. Partial reps. Everyone forgets about partial reps. Those are actually quite effective for helping to build strength through these fuller range of motion. Isometrics and intelligent negatives. You don't want to go like too crazy with all the eccentric negatives because you'll explode yourself. But if you did some partial reps, some isometrics, and just a few controlled lowerings, and even try to get back up. You have to. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they just had a great insight. She was talking about how she got her first pull-up because she allowed herself to just have fun with it and struggle and make a mess. Just getting up there, sucking and failing for a while, but doing those partials, doing the negatives, boom, flailing, but just really registering the challenge in the body weight, and then eventually ascended like an angel as well. So and of course there's like bands and machines. The bands, I think, can be hit or miss sometimes because like with pull-ups, they sometimes help where you don't need it and they don't help where you do need it, if that makes sense. So you just gotta kind of be judicious where you apply those. So there's some ideas for you, gentle listeners.
And then, of course, if you don't mind me, both for the dips and the chin-ups, make sure you know why you're trying to get those max reps up. Just take a minute to remind yourself. If you're doing all these little things to get, you did 20 pull-ups and now you want to get to 25, just take a moment to remind, now why am I, if it's for a test, to get onto this team, you have to do 25, I'm with you. If it's, because that cost to benefit ratio really starts showing up with exercises like the dip, the deadlift, the dip, the deadlift, the pull-up. And there's probably a few other, they're wonderful exercises, but when you take them and then you go, well, if I can do this, and then you start bam, bam, slamming you tend to end up on the wrong side of things.
And I'll say this again, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think I mentioned this on the podcast. I went down to the local smoothie shop and they had the pull-up bar contest out.
Yeah,
Dad set the record. Dad set the record of 25 good dead hang pull-ups in 1 minute. And I was able to do that without hardly ever going above 8 reps in any pull-up session, right? So that's, let that be known, is you can kind of like boost your max reps by just getting stronger overall. Now I do go higher reps sometimes. I don't think I'd be able to do 25 reps if I only ever did like 1 or 2 pull-ups at a time, right? But generally I'm kind of within the 5 to 8 rep range and often doing a lot of weighted pull-ups. And that was enough that with a little bit of coffee in me and a bunch of group fitness workout moms, pressuring me on, cranked them out fairly easily, actually. So yeah, the lower rep, heavier stuff will help a lot with getting those max numbers up too. Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you, Dan. We all have to, flaunt our accomplishments every now and then. Here we go. Coco Loco has a question. Here's my question. I am in love with sports. Loves them, Dan. Just loves sports. If I could do something twice a day, fighting, like fight people, he could fight people twice a day or do soccer twice a day. And he wants to do it because he loves it so much, but he wants to do it twice a day. Is that feasible, or is he going to burn out? So I guess the question is general twice a day training approaches. How do you feel about the 2-a-day stuff, Dan? Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's just something we do in sports. It's an early season thing. I threw the discus and the hammer twice a day. There are certain competitions that you do it. He's followed up with a
How to manage it. Okay, so you're gonna do twice a day. This is a done deal. Now wants to know how best to manage and structure.
You better be getting paid for it. You better have other aspects of your life locked down. I mean, during the Easter break of 95, 96, I guess it was, I got our throwing group to throw twice a day, every day. We all agreed not to go on vacation. It was one of those weird ones where Easter was on the first Sunday and there was no track meets on the following Saturday, which is weird. So we all agreed that we would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2-a-day training. And we met at all the different facilities we threw at. And, but I mean, I woke up, I had someone to watch my children. I had a car. One of the moms was very kind. She made lunch for us every day. We'd go back a couple hours later. We go to Bingham High School. We'd go to Brighton High School. We'd come back to Judge. We went up to Clearfield, and we all just trained together. But, there's some organization that has to happen. Facilities are a big issue. I mean, but you also have to be able to tell me what sport you're doing, man. And if it is truly skill practice, if it is something you're trying to get better at, you better have the fundamentals locked down before you go to twice a day. You just better have the fundamentals. Yeah. Good.
Gentle listener Jamie says, what do you think of neutral grip pull-ups? So I take that as palms are facing each other.
Remember I said so on my home pull-up thing, my hands perfectly sit where the support comes through. So now I do pull-ups neutral. I think, actually, I would think for the bulk of the people I work with, neutral grip, because most of the people I work with have bad shoulders. If they don't have bad shoulders, they have bad elbows. If they don't have bad elbows, they have bad backs. So, I mean, that's just...
And they don't got bad backs, they got bad breath. So something's bad.
And they just ugly. So neutral grip is actually probably something I would recommend more. There is an issue about where to put the head. It doesn't sound like much, but I have to lay my head back.
A slight lean back, yeah. Uh-huh.
And again, none of that's a big deal. It's just...
I actually kind of like that occasionally, the slight lean back, and it allows you to kind of pull deeper and almost turn it into a pseudo row at the top. I think if you're purposeful about that, it actually is like a pretty cool variation.
And that was something Vince Garanda, the great bodybuilding coach, used to really recommend, that pull-ups don't come here, pull-ups come here.
To the sternum, right? Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. And if you can, hold that for 2 seconds. And if you can't, then you probably aren't doing a pull-up in his view. He was very strict about certain things. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Yay.
Good. Awesome. All right. Here's a interesting one. Gentle listener Levi says, I saw Mark Ribito made fun of kettlebells, called them useless. Are kettlebells useless, Dan? What are we to make of this?
Well,
Mark Ribito is well known in the strength world, of course, if people
are in the last couple of months, years, Mark has gotten increasingly more, I have, this isn't the first time I've heard this, by the way. This isn't new information. He's getting increasingly more like angry at the microphone, just because he doesn't find you. I mean, that's to quote the great Jeff Lebowski. That's like your opinion, man. I don't see, when you make a grand statement like that, kettlebells are useless, it demands a high level of proof, and I just don't. Useless. I mean,
I don't. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
If that door needs to be held open, my 10-kilo kettlebell will hold it open until the end of the earth. So, by definition, then, it's not. It has a use. So, right there, with that simple explanation, I'm right. If you're fishing over here in Island Pond and the depth of the lake at one point is 61 feet, and you were to wrap your fishing line around that kettlebell in a certain way and had a quick release on it, you could get that lure, or, well, I probably have to use live bait, but I'm guessing live bait at 61 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It would. So I've given you 2 examples how the kettlebell is not useless. One, as a door jamb, 2 as a fishing weight. I like it when I travel because a 20-kilo bell, which is this big, you put the seat belt through it, and you put it in the back the seat behind the passenger on the passenger side, and you can drive all the way across the country and get 100 presses a day in every single day, and the kettlebell stays right there. So there's another use. I can train on the road. It's a competition exercise. You could say the discus is useless, and I would agree 100%, except it paid for all my education and all my travel. I was a high-level discus thrower from 1970 to July 24th, 2010, when I officially retired. The discus is useless, but it paid for all my education and travel. So useless is a broad term, and it's a very powerful term, and it would demand more than just someone yelling at a microphone. I think Mike Boyle's comments on Ripito at Perform Better were insightful, and this would be a better question probably for Mike.
Yeah, well, I'll just add a few thoughts. That, of course, Dan, that was well said, and I think absolutely accurate. I don't know the context of this, so if there is a context that I'm missing, forgive me, but a statement like that just seems so obviously preposterous, right? If you're saying, hey, the kettlebell is useless or not as great as, say, the barbell if you're trying to do a deadlifting competition, who's going to argue with that, right? Yeah. Only an idiot, right? But to say it's useless full stop, it's just demonstrably false, right? The kettlebell is a training tool like anything else, and when appropriately used, intelligently programmed, not only can but has gotten people tremendous results that they're very happy to have. So it just seems like statements like that just strike me as just so ridiculous that if people just sort of blindly buy into them and parrot them, you might want to think about taking a more critically reflective turn in relation to the types of people that you're following online, regardless of what else they say that might be very useful, right? And I'm not denying, I've read Ripito's stuff before and his starting strength, and yeah, fine, good stuff. But people can say good things in one area and clearly ridiculous things in another. So there you go. All right.
And and I'm going to ask you, Pat, as a friend of mine, and I'm going to ask our gentle listeners, if I ever start coming across as old man yelling at clouds and divisive and demeaning, would you please call me out on it?
Especially if you start being mean to your microphone. I mean, what did the poor microphone ever do? I couldn't imagine being mean to my little Behringer or whatever this is. He's nothing but good to me.
I worry about that because it's very common. I mean, and I'm not singling out Rip or anything. I'm just saying that you see it a lot. Liebesstrength over in Germany, he has that, and he's talked about this several times, and he's the one that had me when Steve Maxwell called me out for having injuries. Folks, I have injuries. I'm sorry. Okay. I will say this though: for 65, I still think I'm probably stronger than most people ever. So if I do start to come off as that way, please let me know. There are times I get frustrated. And if you ask me the same question 10,000 times, I know I get a little bit angry and a little bit, oh, God, again. But just remind me, Pat, and I think I think I would like that. If you just remind me to hey, Dan, you're grouchy and because that's a sign that it's a sign that you're no longer in. Wayne just right. You could be nicer about lunges. Wayne, do all the damn lunges you like, okay? Don't do them around me, okay? No, you
still dance. No, good. It's on the record, gentle listeners. So there you go. We're moving on. All right. Brigu says, I love listening to your podcast. I'm a 75-kilo male, and I can do 3 chin-ups with a 24-kilo kettlebell. My goal is to do a chin-up with half of my body weight. Any tips?
Well, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, you're close because that's the 32 gets you right there, doesn't it? Right, basically the 32K. Patrick, you've done pull-ups with the 32, haven't you?
Oh yes, actually, quite easily. Yeah, pull-ups. I'm not like naturally good at many exercises, but the pull-ups and dips are just 2 exercises I've always sort of just had. An inherent. I can chin a 32 for many reps.
Can you give him any advice besides
Yeah. So I would say, I think just basics, 3 days a week. Go 1 day for volume, 1 day for intensity, right? So by volume, body weight or pretty light, just try to get a lot of really good higher rep sets under your belt. Just build that up. Maybe a bit more density on that day. 1 day intensity where you really, try to push the weight with it. And maybe you're just doing 1 to 3, maybe 5 reps on that day. And then have another day where I think you use a moderate weight and just do just a few sets. So maybe you use the 24 or 20 kilogram there. And I like cycling that. So break it down again. 1 day where you just kind of body weight, but more density, higher reps, a lot of volume. 1 day where you really push the intensity, and 1 day sort of in between. I find that those 3 days a week with that fluctuating with those variables tends to jump people up pretty quick. Yeah.
And, and if we were to say if we were to talk about front squat, we would talk about press, just about any grind that your point was exactly right. That you just gave the grind template there. So any exercise is not ballistic. So anything that's not a swing, snatch, clean, that's the template you probably want to use most of the time.
Yeah. 2 perfects, as my daughter Marin says. 2 perfects.
2 perfects.
2 perfects. She goes 1 perfect, 2 perfects. All right.
Like that.
Karsten says, hi, I just did a 300 swings workout with kettlebell presses and chins between sets, 5-3-1 reps in press and chins. Pretty minimalist, but pretty solid. Thanks a lot. Okay, so that's just a comment, but awesome. 2 perfects for you, Karsten.
Yeah, 2 perfects. I like that. I like that a lot. Boy, I mean, I tell you one thing: if all you could do is the Karsten workout, you'd be okay. That's solid stuff. I like the overhead press and chin up combination. I've always liked that as my favorite for most people because it keeps the shoulders healthy, and you don't get when you start. I'm just going to riff here for a second, but folks, when you decide to do a rowing motion in any of these kind of 1 or 2, 3 lift programs, the row always ends up being a lower back issue. It just does. And the bench press always ends up being a shoulder issue. The push-up becomes a shoulder issue because it just does. That's just what happens. And you can say, well, I have perfect technique and I never make an error. And my point is, yeah, the slop factor on 10,000 total reps, there's going to be a rep. There's going to be a bad rep. And that's kind of what happens. Okay.
Right. Very good. Coco Loco just has another comment. Nice one. P.S. I am so rude, he says. Thank you for your work. I am currently on day 15 of Easy Strength. It works perfectly for me. Thank you for all of that for free. Thank you. Well, thank you, Coco Loco.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Easy Strength is Easy Strength. If you take it, you read it, you apply it, you take it seriously. It can be. What it does is it teaches most people, Pat, that lifting weights is like learning better at anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you practice it and stick with it, for example, you don't play left-handed for a month and then right-handed for a month, left-handed for right. You probably don't go from a 4-string guitar to a 12 when you're trying to get better, right? You probably stick with one thing for a while.
Specificity matters, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Specificity works, and there's a high price for it, but it works.
Yeah, awesome. Here's a good question. This one's about the trap bar deadlift. Jamie says, what are your thoughts on the trap bar deadlift, or should I just keep doing conventional? I'm 45, and I don't want any injuries at this age. Dan, what's your whole philosophy of the trap bar deadlift? Do you have one? Or the trap bar in general?
Yeah, I can't remember if I kept it, though. I might have given it to somebody. Every so often, someone gives me a trap bar. We use it once. We put it in the misfit toy island of misfit toys area. I don't like it. My brother Gary loves it. It's the most classic. Your miles may vary kind of thing. Your mileage may vary. I think I can understand. I look at it. I'll say this: correctly done, I'm a big fan of the trap bar deadlift. But there's those first 2 words. I mean, when people do that weird thing where they stick their butt straight up in the air and their shoulders come out of their sockets and they kind of sag the weight up,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just terrible. The other thing I will say is if you deadlift a certain number at the trap bar, don't tell people that's your best deadlift because the differences are huge. So
my philosophy of the trap bar deadlift is this: I almost never use it, but I'm almost never mad when I'm using it. So, for example, like I'll almost never use a trap bar deadlift when I'm at the Y. But if it's the only thing, if everything else is taken and I'm using the trap bar deadlift, I'm not sad about it, right? That's it. But that's pretty infrequently. Maybe I would be sad about it if that was like the more frequent story, but it's not, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with it. I remember when the kettlebell first came out, a lot of people were doing what do you call it? The double deadlift. The you have a kettlebell outside of both your feet, and you do deadlifts. Is there the two?
Yeah, is there a name for that? I don't know, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
double deadlift, and they said it's better than a trap bar. And I thought, and I tried it, and I thought, well, better is a weird word, but I think the trap bar is a leg push hinge, not a squat at all. And I think if you squat it, I think that's where you get into your trouble. But there's great value to it.
Yeah, and I almost always flip the trap bar upside down when I do it for range of motion reasons, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there you go, guys. All right, let's take a few more here. William says, I'm 65 yesterday. 2 perfects to you, William. I did 50 perfect dips, all singles. I have the time. So he did 1 dip per set, 50 sets, 65 years old. I dislike making out on sets. I don't know what that means. I feel good today. What do you guys think of this type of training? Single rep training, Dan?
Well, I mean, it's a great tradition in our strength sports. I mean, you don't usually hear about it with dips, but I know a lot of people do that with pull-ups. So 25 singles in the pull-up so that you never get yourself in failure. It's so you don't blow you don't get middle-aged pull-up syndrome. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, 50 reps seems excessive to me just because
he clarified. He's not talking about making out during sets, maxing out. That is it's an important clarification.
Like
okay, he doesn't like maxing out during sets.
Okay, let's make sure we have the English correct. So maxing out between sets versus making out between sex. Okay, got it. Okay. Because I had a completely different view of what this guy was working on here. Okay.
This completely reframes the question. All right. Yeah, I mean, so let's talk a little about maxing out for a minute. Because there's different ways this is understood, and here's what I like. 2 reps in reserve. From the best of my experience and the best of what I read into literature is if you just keep 2 reps in reserve, you're pretty much going to get all the benefits of fully maxing out anyways, without, some of the potential downsides as well. And by 2 reps in reserve, what's typically meant by that is you're working within 2 reps of technical failure, not even absolute failure. And technical failure is when you really notice some like qualitative difference in your rep output. So like you start compensating in your technique, or there's like a drastic speed change or something like that. 2 reps in reserve within technical failure, I think is like a good operating range. Dan, I'd be curious your thoughts on that. If you agree with that, if you like that.
Oh, I mean, that's a nice thing for all our listeners to kind of almost make into a mantra. I think I told you about the one Olympic lifting coach that if you miss an Olympic lift, you're done. And the idea is if you snatch 200 kilos, but you miss 60, there's something wrong with you today. But no, my mind was somewhere else. Yeah, that means there's something wrong with you today. And so that would be an extreme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's the other one would be that slop factor idea that CrossFit came up with. That it's okay to have a certain percent of your reps be crappy. And I remember it's so obviously. I mean, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think doing crappy pull-ups is good for you. I don't think doing crappy squats is good for you. This is my experience. Okay, it's like doing crappy tackling in American football. You can kill yourself doing that. So, obviously, my job right now is to say, well, obviously, somewhere between you miss a rep, you go home, and with a slop factor, and what you've done here is you said, well, okay, let's drop both those. here's a rule, and it's a good rule.
Yeah.
I want you to repeat it one more time. Go.
Work within 2 reps of technical, not necessarily absolute failure. 2 perfects.
2 perfects.
Jacob says, I am constantly checking myself during practice to make sure I am measuring my effort. You are correct in saying easier said than done. Let me offer a quick comment here, and then I want Dan's thoughts on it, because this ties into the technical failure and maxing out. What we find is people are actually quite bad at estimating what they're actually capable of, right? So you have these studies, and you don't need the studies because everyone knows it's true in their own experience of being a coach, is that if you tell people to work at a certain intensity, what they think is their max actually isn't even close, right? Because then you have like some trainer or coach or Dan come in, and it's like, okay, before you were doing 5 reps at this weight, Dan tells you to like sack up, and now you can do 15. Clearly your estimates were like way off, right? So that's just something to be in mind, is that when it comes to actually getting within 2 reps of technical failure, make sure you're actually doing that. That's hard work. It's hard, and people are often capable, and this is, I guess, trying to be optimistic. You're probably capable of more than you initially think you are in a lot of these efforts. Dan, I know you've definitely experienced it.
For example, when I first started doing that, those high rep bodyweight back squats, so 225, 100, 225 for our international people, 225 is a common number because that's the 2 big plates. It's 102.5 basically in kilos. And when I first started doing 225, which was my body weight, and I can remember getting up to 20 and racking the bar and being a sweaty Betty. And then the next time I decided I'd get 50 out of it. Well, going from 20 to 50, I'm no math whiz, but that's 30 more reps. And like I think I've said to you before, if to save the world, I could have done 51 that day. To save the world, I probably could have done 60. Mm-hmm. But you're right. So there are certain exercises where your technical failure, it might be the only thing that is a good, because in high rep back squats, trap bar deadlifts, you can just keep doing more reps. The late great Lane Cannon famously did, 20 reps with 405, 102.5 kilos. And because I just could keep going. Well, that's 20 reps with 405. I mean, that's, but where was the technical failure? In my back squats I probably started bringing my knees together, or doing that knee, that where your knees go. Mm-hmm. I probably did that early. I probably had some weird back rounding. I probably had some, God only knows what technical errors I was doing. So there's probably a few exercises you can kind of push through and still get more reps, but your technical failure was a long time before.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And there's other exercises where technical failure probably will save your life. And I'm thinking the bench press, for example.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Once
Smart.
you start getting those sloppy reps in them, you should never ever have a sloppy bench press ever.
Yeah. That is very, very good advice. All right, let's see if we can squeeze in 1 or 2 more here. Deo.
Hey, real quick. I was about to say, hey, Deo, it's good to see you again, and also Nate's here. It's good to see Nate here again. Just personal friends of mine, good people. So go ahead.
Great to see all of you. Deo, the man himself, says, question for Dan. Thoughts on the drill modified using cleans? Power clean, front squat, hang, clean, full clean. Can we read the benefits from this if someone doesn't quite have the snatch yet? Dan, remind us, what is the drill? And then
the drill is a power snatch followed by overhead squat, hang squat snatch, full squat snatch from the floor. That's the drill. Yes, Deo, the reason I don't talk about it as much is that I never really needed it because my clean was always so good. But if your clean isn't as good as, I know that sounds a little bit of braggery, but my clean was good the first time I ever put my hands on a bar. My snatch took a long time. My squat took, still working on that. So sometimes you got to remember, Dale, even my own program still, and it brings us back to Rip's issue in some ways. we coaches are always going to dance in our own wheelhouse. We're always going to be much more comfortable in the things we do best.
Mm.
And if I'm, if you're going to hang out with me for a few weeks, you're going to get a lot of delicious scrambled eggs for breakfast. You can get a lot of overnight oats for breakfast. You can get a lot of yogurt with berries with overnight oats for breakfast, because I'm really good at making those.
Yeah. Do you ever put parsley on the scrambled eggs, Dan?
I have done that, yes, but wow, no. I tell you what, something that's surprisingly good is basil.
Yeah.
Any herb.
Yeah, herb it up with your scrambled eggs, listeners. If you haven't experimented with the herbs yet, there's a whole world you've yet to enter.
If you walk outside and clip it off and bring it in. I'll tell you another thing that I've done it a few times. I have 6 different varietals of mint in my garden. And I got to tell you, mint, shockingly, butter with mint in the pan. I don't know. Maybe because it makes those oils explode.
It's too perfect, Stan?
It's too perfect.
It's too perfect. So let's squeeze in one.
Yeah, Deo, yeah, absolutely. That's fine.
Yeah. All right. Final question for today is going to be this one from Mr. Keen. Gentle listener Levi says, "What are your thoughts on hangboards? They're common in the climbing community for building grip strength where the hand is mostly open. Is there something better out there for closed grip strength? Question mark."
Well, pegboards have been around a long time, and he asked a question about climbing community, so that I don't want to get myself in an area I don't know a lot about, but the climbers that I knew in college, and I hate to say it, but some of this modern climbing stuff, I hate to say it, I'm proud to say it, really originated at Utah State. They had the rock climbing community in the 70s talking about this stuff, and they were like real pioneers.
Wasn't that the whole thing with like Jim Jones starting out? Wasn't it like climbers too?
Yeah. So where I live, Colorado and Utah, our urban climbing populations really did pioneer a lot of stuff. I mean, one of the things they used to do at our Utah State weight room was they jumped up on the door frame and did pull-ups with their fingers on the door. And I remember asking the guys, and goes, "Oh, yeah, we climb," and it's like, sort of my thought was, well, that's just hiking, right? No, we climb up the side. Why don't you just hike up? You'll get there just as fast and safer, probably. Yeah. But it was I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So yeah, pegboards. Pegboards. If you're a climber, you should be able to do a pegboard, and it probably a good way to get a lot of volume work in relative safety, right? You can just put one up and just get some,
right.
It'd be like doing repeat 200s for a sprinter. They've got their value and they have their value, but I know in the climbing community, they have to have other tools.
Yeah. I'll just make it, because I'm not in the climbing world. I have a couple of friends that are quite good at it, but I don't know enough to speak too intelligently on it. But I will say this about grip strength, is this relates to the point we're talking about before, Dan, is it's very specific. I mean, there's pinching grip strength, there's crushing grip strength, there's withholding grip strength, and strength in one area will not necessarily translate to another. I'll give you an example I am familiar with. There's a certain grip strength that's required for playing the guitar, right?
Oh, yeah.
Bending the strings. And I'll tell you what, the grip strength I have in weightlifting has almost zero transfer to the guitar. There's almost zero transfer, right? And people are like, oh, just get those hand crushers again. No, it does nothing. The only thing that will get you really stronger at just crushing strings on the guitar is get heavier gauges of strings and just start the specificity matters so much, and the transfer is so little. I'm not going to say it's not there at all, but it's a lot less than I think people would expect.
Yeah, I mean, when people ask me about Highland game training, they always ask me, well, what about what you do in the weight room? And it's like, these are throwing events. It's the snatch will probably help your Highland games, yes, but you got to throw, baby. And it's strange because when people ask me why I thought the Highland game 56-pound weight toss for distance made me a better discus thrower, it took me I would say months to figure out why I thought it was true, But the why took me a long time. That's because when you have a 56-pound weight out there, your body has to be one piece. So when you're holding the 4-pound discus, it's much easier. There, that's why. That
Perfect.
took me a long time to put together.
Yeah.
Specificity, I would say specificity is hyper true in grip. And then whatever you want to call endurance. So you can show up to a kayaking race as the world champion marathoner. You're not going to do well. The kayaker is going to get into a triathlon and not do it. The triathlete is going to be good in 3 events, but suck in something else. Specificity is a weird thing.
Yes, it is. Dan, before we close this out, give us the updates. What's the good word on the book? How's the editing process going? And anything else you want to announce before we say goodbye?
Yeah, Danny hates the editing process.
Don't we all? Mm-hmm.
You look at the mistakes you made, and you're just like, oh, God, I'm an idiot. And then this is how I proofread.
With the Muppet face on. What was that Muppet that had that face?
I just want to cry the whole. So it's going. It's not going well, but it's going. Went to Canada yesterday. Went to Sherbrooke. That's where my dad kind of grew up. Part of his life. Did a real nice walk around the Sherbrooke town lake. Beautiful place. That's where the Montreal Olympics did some of the rowing.
Cool.
Beautiful place. Then dropped into a place called Cottlecock, which is just over the border, and it's I had probably the best ice cream of my life. And if you know me, you know I don't eat ice cream.
I do.
It was phenomenal, and went to a little winery up there, and they use black currant. It's called Cassis black currant wine, and the black currant is probably the most. Folks, if you're into this kind of thing, get on black currants now. They're the next fitness wave. I'm going to make someone on this podcast a lot of money. Black currants are probably the best antioxidants you can shove down your system, and I shove them down by drinking cassis mixed with liquors. So,
time for the goji berry to step aside.
Step the hell aside.
You're gone.
Training wise, I'm still getting all those reps in. I'm getting those presses in, and lots of walking, lots of presses, lots of swimming, lots of kayaking.
Great.
Hanging out with my nieces, hanging out with Paul and my good friend Erica, and Lonnie Wade up there at North Country Union High School. I'm making a surprise visit on another one of my friends today. I don't want to down in New Hampshire, so keep that in your colonial tricolor hat. Mm-hmm. So things are good. I'm really enjoying today. In fact, this isn't the book, but Lawrence Block's new book just came out today. I think today is the 18th. Yeah. So I'll be listening to the Audible on that pretty soon. The Burglar, he's the author of The Burglar, who traded Ted Williams, the burglar who stole Mondragon, the burglar that counted the spoons. He's probably one of my favorite mystery writers, Lawrence Block, and the Bernie Rotobars are wonderful. I'm just trying to keep up on my reading. I'm rereading Barry Estabrook's Just Eat. And the reason I like the book Just Eat so much, and I've recommended it on your podcast before, and I emailed him, he didn't email me back. So, but he's a guy who used to work for a magazine called Eating Well, who has to lose 40 pounds. And he figures it out by trying all these different things. Mm-hmm. And then, gentle listener, here's why I brought up this whole thing. He finds out what works for him. And the number one thing I liked is, like, for example, he talks about in the book is how satiating he found beans. He also discovered that if he eats like things like sandwiches and burritos, those concentrated calorie foods, that they don't work well for him with his fat loss goals. If he eats 2 pieces of bread, a salad, and a little bit of meat on the side, he's satiated. If he eats a sandwich, same amount of food, he eats 2 of those. And I just looked at that line. It was like, oh, that's pretty good.
That's right. He's scienced himself.
Well, yeah, and I think there's, when people hang out with me for a while and they see some of the, very often people say, well, isn't that bad for you? And I look at them like, bad? What is moral theology? But like, I know what works for me. Fasting works for me. Vegetables, kimchi and sauerkraut work for me. Drinking extra water, exercising fasted work for me. I know that. I've tested it. It works for me. But some of our listeners might be sitting there going, yeah, crap don't work for me. So how about you, Pat? Anything I should know in your world?
Boy, Dan. Well, my birthday's next week, and so is Marin's, and we're having a joint birthday party. So if you want to swing by Wisconsin and come to a Nintendo-themed birthday party, you're more than
welcome. What day is that?
That would be October the 23rd. Is her birthday. So she was born a day before me. She was 23rd. I'm 24th. So we just smushed the celebration together.
I love the idea. Well, I will be still here at the Essex in Island Pond, Vermont. Sorry, I can't make it. Can I get you next time? A present of any kind?
Next time. We'll celebrate on the podcast, Dan. As always.
Yeah. Please remind me, because I'll forget by then.
That's right. As always, Dan, I would give this conversation 2 perfects. And if everybody else agrees, please give 2 perfects below by hitting the perfect button, and like and share and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week. Goodbye.
Like and share.